So the last 10 minutes of this are just nuts, in the good way. An extended, very well put together action sequence wherein John Rambo lures his enemies into a series of booby traps, tunnels under his farmhouse, and just shreds them into goo with saws and nails and spikes and sawed-off shotguns and machine guns and tripwire mines and arrows and that friggin' Bowie knife he swings like such a beast he can just hack a dude's legs or their fucking head off with just one clean hit, and it's gory and bloody and nasty as hell with a final killing stroke for the main-ish bad guy. I mean, you gotta see it to believe that it's in a mainstream movie. You know, I mean, strictly in that respect, for the limited stretch of time, hats off, Sly, you still got it. I mean, just imagine how much more people would get out of it if there had been anything interesting or cool going on in the movie before that. Or if any of those random bad guys getting killed had like names or personalities or identifying characteristics or any reason for us to give a shit who they were, or if the events leading up to them being there had been compelling, suspenseful, or original in any way, instead of just being a generic Taken knockoff goosed up with some half-hearted Mexican border xenophobia that can't even muster the energy to commit to that base level of thematic coherence. Or if even that brief part had felt at all meaningfully like a Rambo movie, apart from the intermittent Jerry Goldsmith motif. I mean, even at their lowest points, the classic Rambo installments were alternately capable of eliciting cheers or ruffling feathers with their evergreen controversial mixing of topical scenarios and B-movie ultraviolence, right? But apart from a single aerial shot of what I guess we're calling the wall under construction, and the same generically ugly Mexican gangland stereotypes on display in every other Hollywood action movie like this, it's not appreciably worse on that front than, say, Man on Fire over a decade ago, and pardon the pun, it pales in comparison to Peppermint last year, so I guess that's the world now. John Rambo gets out politically incorrected by Jennifer freaking Garner. Now, I mean, do you even need to know what the plot is? Do you care? Okay, fine. So we rejoin John Rambo 10 years after coming back to a family farm he apparently has in Arizona at the end of the last movie from 2008, where he spent the last decade being a horse farmer, okay, and surrogate dad, sure, to a now 18-year-old niece after the death of her mother from cancer and abandonment by her deadbeat dad who took off to Mexico. Playing good dad to said niece being obviously the sole thing keeping Rambo from turning back into himself all this time. Of course, she decides to sneak across the border to Mexico to seek closure from her apparently resurfaced real dad, and gets captured by ruthless cartel sex traffickers like immediately, meaning Rambo has to track her down and do his whole Rambo thing to get her back. Except actually, no he doesn't. For some damn reason, the film bizarrely decides to act like Rambo is a regular human guy again for most of its runtime, as though anyone who goes to see Rambo Last Blood is coming in unaware or somehow having forgotten that this dude all but single-handedly dismantled battalions of the North Vietnamese, Soviet, and Burmese armies in the previous 3 movies all by himself. So Act 2 draws itself out into this bizarre, weak-sauce Taken-alike, where Rambo, despite Stallone being in like ridiculous shape and somehow looking 10 years younger than at least he did 10 years ago in the last one. I mean, say what you will about Stallone, dude takes care of himself. He does some light detective work in Mexico, gets his ass beat by a bunch of just regular henchmen, meets Paz Vega for a completely pointless nothing guest role, does a dumb riff on the hammer thing from Old Boy, and then only when things get significantly shitty enough plot-wise, like he was waiting around for permission or something, does the switch get flipped and he finally seems like, oh yeah, right, I'm Rambo, and we get to that still meaningless but at least impressively nasty finish. But even then, it's not an especially definitive ending, despite all the talking that gets done about how meaningfully a growth experience this has all been for Rambo. I mean, setting aside the jarring aesthetic shift from wilderness battlefield action of all the other movies to urban Mexico and rural Americana neo-modern Western setting, the idea of reminding audiences that we typically only see action hero characters like Rambo for a few days or even hours out of their whole lives, and thus giving us belated context on what else he has going on in his background is, okay, there's a certain appeal there, but nothing happening in Last Blood feels strongly informed by the previous films or reverberates back to give them any more context. So ultimately, this is just another bad late period franchise entry that doesn't even feel like it knows why it exists. First Blood got sequels in the first place because Stallone and the producers had thematic or political stuff they wanted to explore, for lack of a better word, with the character. The fourth one got made because Stallone had just tied the bow off on Rocky, or so we thought. And while Stallone may be underappreciated as an actor in many respects, he's never been all that good at pretending he gives a shit when he doesn't. 4 out of 10, most of that going to the ending. This is a bad, mostly boring and uneven entry, and what is honestly, if we're being clear with ourselves, a pretty uneven series. And this time, I really hope we are done.